Once upon a time, in a school called Grace Memorial, there was a girl named Adanna. The school was a place of learning, of laughter, of friendships. But for Adanna, it was something else entirely. Adanna was not like the other children. While they ran freely across the schoolyard, their faces bright with joy, she walked with her head lowered, avoiding their gazes. A deep scar, jagged and unmistakable, ran down her cheek like a river carved into stone. Because of this, she put on a patch to school every day. The mark has been there since she was little, a permanent mark from an accident no one liked to speak about. Whenever she asked, her mother would simply shake her head, her eyes clouding over with a sorrow Adanna could not understand. But despite it all, her mother would cup her face gently, stroke her hair, and say, "Adanna, true beauty is in the heart." She said it with such certainty that, for a moment, Adanna almost believed it. Because at school, nobody cared about the beauty inside the heart. The whispers started before she even entered a room. The stares followed her like shadows, cutting through her skin deeper than the scar ever could. Children pointed, snickered, nudged each other. Look at her face. A girl giggled one afternoon, not even bothering to lower her voice. "She looks like a cracked calabash." A boy sneered, his words sharp as broken glass. Laughter rippled through the group, growing louder, bolder. Adanna clenched her fists, willing herself not to cry, not to give them the satisfaction. But no matter how hard she tried, their words burrowed deep, wrapping around her heart like thorns. And among them all, the worst was Ivy. Ivy did not just whisper. She did not just laugh. She made it her mission to remind Adanna, every single day, that she did not bellend. Ivy was the undisputed queen of the school. She moved through the hallways like she owned them, her presence commanding attention. Every step she took in her designer shoes was deliberate, a reminder that she was different, better. She wasn't just rich, she was wealthy, the kind of wealth that draped itself over her like a second skin. Her mother owned the largest fabric store in town, and it showed. Ivy's outfits were always the most extravagant, her dresses woven from the finest fabrics, her accessories imported, her perfume expensive enough to make heads turn. Her hair was always perfectly done, her nails immaculately polished, and her laughter, sharp and cutting, echoed through the school halls like the sound of a queen addressing her court. But Ivy wasn't just admired, she was feared. She moved through the school like a queen surveying her kingdom, her every step deliberate, her every glance a silent decree. She didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. Her presence alone was enough. Teachers praised her, students envied her, and those who dared to cross her regretted it soon enough. Ivy thrived on power, wielding it like a sword, sharp, precise, and merciless. She knew exactly how to find a person's weakness, how to twist words into weapons, how to turn laughter into a dagger that cut deeper than any insult. She had a way of making people feel small with nothing more than a smirk, a raised eyebrow, a single whispered word to her circle of admirers. And her favorite target? Adanna. It was as if Ivy had made it her personal mission to remind Adanna of her place, beneath her. She sought her out in the hallways, sneered at her in the classroom, made sure her name was always the punchline to some cruel joke. To Ivy, Adanna was not just another girl at school. She was prey. Adanna was everything Ivy wasn't. Quiet, modest, an easy mark. It was as if her very existence annoyed Ivy, and she made it her mission to remind Adanna of her place. Every day, she found new ways to humiliate her, to turn her into the school's favorite punchline. That morning was no different. Adanna had just stepped into the classroom when Ivy's voice rang out, slicing through the air like a whip. "Why do you even bother coming to school?" Ivy leaned lazily against the classroom door, a smirk curling her lips. Her eyes flickered with amusement as she looked Adanna up and down, her gaze stopping at the worn-out dress and scuffed shoes. "You look like a broken doll someone threw away." The words hit like a slap, but before Adanna could even react, laughter exploded around her. Ivy's friends doubled over, giggling and nudging each other, delighting in their leader's cruelty. Adanna felt the heat rise to her cheeks, her fingers tightening around the straps of her school bag. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, to be anywhere but here. But she said nothing. Because what was there to say? Ivy had made sure she had no voice. Adanna clenched her fists but said nothing. She had learned that speaking up only made things worse. But deep inside, she felt a heavy weight pressing against her heart. One day, during lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with chatter and the delicious aroma of fried rice and chicken. Adanna had saved her lunch money all week to buy her favorite meal. As she entered, she didn't notice the way Ivy and her friends were watching her, whispering, giggling. She sat at her usual spot and placed her tray on the table, only to hear a loud squelch. Her skirt was soaked. The coldness hit her first, then the silence. Then, laughter. Loud, cruel, merciless. Adanna peed herself. Ivy's voice rang through the cafeteria. Adanna's ears burned. Her fingers dug into the table as the humiliation crashed over her like waves in a storm. "Look at her," a boy pointed. "She wet herself like a baby." Even those who didn't want to laugh covered their mouths, hiding their amusement. Adanna wanted to disappear. But she didn't. She stood up slowly, locked eyes with Ivy, and, with a steady voice, said, "At least I can wash my skirt. But can you ever wash away your cruelty?" The cafeteria went silent. Ivy's grin faltered, her face twisting in anger. She wanted to break Adanna completely. And she wasn't done yet. The following week, something even worse happened. The rain had fallen all morning, leaving the schoolyard filled with puddles of thick, sticky mud. Adanna held her books close as she walked, ignoring the whispers, the stares. But Ivy wasn't done with her yet. As Adanna turned the corner, there they were, Ivy and her gang. "Where are you going, Scarface?" Ivy smirked. Adanna turned to walk the other way, but they blocked her path. She glanced down. Behind her, a deep puddle of brown mud stretched across the ground. Ivy grinned. She shoved Adanna. Adanna fell, face first into the mud. Laughter exploded. "Now your ugly face matches the ground." Ivy clapped her hands. Her friends howled, their voices sharp like crows cawing over something dead. Mud dripped from Adanna's hair, her clothes, her face. Her heart pounded. Tears burned behind her eyes. But she would not cry. Not for them. She wiped her face, stood up, and walked away, her back straight, her head high. But inside, something cracked. Something small. Something important. That evening, as the sun set, Adanna sat behind the school building, pressing her face into her knees, letting the silent tears fall. Soft footsteps approached. "Why are you crying, my child?" a gentle voice asked. Adanna sniffed, wiped her nose, and looked up. It was Mama F, the school cleaner. She was old, with silver hair wrapped in a scarf, her hands rough from years of scrubbing floors. But her eyes were warm. Adanna hesitated, then whispered, "It's Ivy. She won't stop. She says my scar makes me ugly." Mama F sighed. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small jar, pressing it into Adanna's hands. "What is it?" Adanna asked. "An ointment," Mama F said softly. Then she leaned in, her voice like the wind before a storm. Rub this on your scar every night. And when someone insults you, just say, thank you. They will face the consequences. Adanna frowned. Say thank you? How does that help? Murmur only smiled and walked away. That night, Adanna sat on her wooden bed, staring at the jar. The ointment smelled of herbs, strong and bitter. She hesitated. Was this even real? Could it really change anything? But she had nothing to lose. Slowly, she dipped her finger into the ointment and rubbed it onto her scar. A coolness spread across her skin. It tingled. She sighed, placed the jar under her pillow, and lay down. The next morning, she walked into school. The whispers were waiting. The moment Ivy saw her, the insults began. Scarface, did your skin melt overnight? The laughter was ready. But Adanna, she only smiled. She locked eyes with Ivy and said, thank you. Silence. Ivy blinked. What? I said, thank you. Adanna walked past her, calm, unshaken. The laughter never came. The whispers didn't follow. Ivy stood there, her chest tight, her fingers twitching. The next morning, Ivy's seat was empty. By break time, the whispers spread. Where's Ivy? Maybe she's sick. By the second day, the teachers were concerned. By the third day, the principal sent a staff member to Ivy's house. What they found shocked everyone. Ivy was bedridden, weak. Her once beautiful face was swollen, her voice completely gone. No doctor, no pastor, no herbalist could heal her. Her parents, desperate, sought answers. And the truth led them to Adanna. They rushed to Adanna's house, desperation in their eyes, falling to their knees before her. Ivy's mother clutched Adanna's hands, her voice trembling. Please, she pleaded, forgive our daughter. Adanna's breath caught in her throat. Ivy, her tormentor, the girl who had made her days unbearable, who had laughed at her tears, was now broken, fragile, and at her mercy. A war raged in her heart. The weight of old wounds pressed against her, urging her to turn away, to let Ivy suffer as she had. But then, her mother's voice echoed in her mind. True beauty is in the heart. She closed her eyes, exhaling the bitterness that had taken root in her soul. I will forgive her, she said at last, her voice steady, but she must leave the school, and she must never hurt anyone again. Ivy's parents nodded vigorously, gratitude spilling from their lips in whispered prayers. That night, as Adanna sat by her window, staring at the moonlit sky, she whispered, I forgive you, Ivy. At that moment, a strange wind stirred through the town, rustling the trees, sweeping through the streets like a breath from the heavens. A hush settled over the night. By dawn, Ivy was healed. She never returned to the school. And she never bullied anyone again.